This conference will now be recorded.
Hi, I'm Preston Williams, and welcome to Jazz Talk. Today on our show, we have a very special guest. This gentleman that I'm about to introduce is one of the world's greatest bass players. He's an educator, composer, and has played with everyone under the sun. Let me give you an example. Wayne Shorter, Herbie Hancock, McCoy Tyner, Joni Mitchell, Pat Metheny, Bon Jovi, and I can go on and on. Biney Ray, so many great artists. His name is John Patitucci, and he's here with us today. John, welcome to Jazz Talk.
Thank you for having me, Preston.
Man, it is an honor to have you on the program today. And actually, I had planned to interview you over the past week, and you were actually supposed to be in my area, the Baltimore area, with pianist Joey Calderzaro, at the Baltimore
Calderazzo.
Museum.
Yeah, yeah,
That's right around the
yeah.
corner for me, and I'd planned to go and see you guys, man. And I guess because of the COVID-19, we're all sort of like on lockdown. But thanks for doing this interview. You know, John, most of us are familiar with you as, of course, a bass player, but we don't know too much about your humble beginnings as far as, at a very early age, I guess, you got into music or whatever. But tell us a little bit about that. Understand that you're from Brooklyn, New York.
Yeah.
And tell us about your early years and how you got into music and, what was it like coming up during that time?
Well, it was during the 60s, and my brother, my older brother, who's 3 years older, Tom, who's a
Hmm.
guitarist and a pastor too,
Oh,
but
wow.
he got into playing. I guess one of my cousins across the street had a guitar, was playing, and eventually my grandfather, who had an ear for music, who never really pursued it but had a good ear.
Mm.
He was kind of a Renaissance man. He was the best chef around. Like
Okay.
he should have opened a restaurant, but he didn't. But
Great, great. Well, I was.
and he was home the first time I heard jazz. And he was the one who brought home jazz music.
Ah,
So,
okay.
so he's a real pivotal person in our lives, because he bought his first guitar on
First
my
guitar.
mom's side. So
Okay.
anyway, growing up, my brother started playing. Yeah. So I was trying to be like my brother. I was singing. I wanted to play drums too, but I had bongos and
Mm.
maracas, and I was singing, banging on things. And then I decided, because my brother was playing guitar, that I was going to play the guitar, but I'm lefty. So I was
Ah,
playing right-handed, and I've always played right-handed. I always
that's
played
interesting.
right-handed anyway. So yeah, so I tried the guitar. It didn't feel very good being lefty playing righty. The pick, it just wasn't happening. And my brother was always really astute, and he was always in my corner. And he just saw that and said, I think the bass would be cool, because you use your fingers, and you don't have to
Hmm.
worry about the pick. You
Hmm.
know.
Mm.
So I wound up. We got a bass, like a Sears Telstar, short scale electric bass. It was like $10.
Mm.
It was on somebody's wall down the street.
Wow,
And
really?
yeah, we grew up in East Flatbush.
Uh-huh.
So you know, we didn't have a lot of stuff. My dad came from a family of 12 or 11,
Hmm.
immigrant father who came over on the boat from Italy when he was 16 or something like that. So my dad grew up kind of, we didn't have a lot of stuff, but there were five of us, two kids. So
Interesting.
it was, he used to lecture us a lot about what it was like to actually be poor. I never knew what that was like, because we were kind of middle class, whatever, but he
Right.
did. And he would talk about it all the time.
Hmm.
So much that we would be like, okay, here we go again with but now, as a father, and now I'm 60, and my kids
Man, you
are
don't look
kind of
it.
grown up.
You don't look it,
Yeah,
man.
thank you.
Yeah.
So I'm grateful that he kind of let us know where we came from, and never to forget that.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so I came from a situation, it's kind of like a miracle that I ended up where I ended up, because nobody was in the music business really. Nobody
Yeah.
knew that you could have a life in that.
Mm.
Um, so my brother was a trailblazer and everything, but he had also a career as a pastor, which he finally retired from the particular church. He was in a covenant church out in the San Francisco Bay Area for years. So he still lives out there,
Okay.
because we had moved out there later on. But
Great. Yeah.
so that was the beginning. That was kind of the beginning. We were sort of, I was playing by ear, because the
Mm.
teacher that was trying to teach him was trying to make everybody to learn how to read music, and I just was 8 and I didn't want to deal with it. So when I was 10, finally, that was when my brother put the electric bass in my hand. So I started playing by ear, listening to records, radio, heard James Jamerson on 2 Stevie Wonder tracks.
Yeah,
I was
Jameson.
made to
Yeah.
love her. I was made to love her, and for once in my life, those 2
Uh,
tracks changed my life.
wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
So it's interesting because I always thought that you started with an upright, but actually it was an electric bass that you started with.
Yeah, no, I didn't start on the upright until I was later on in California, where there was one in the band room, and I was
Mm,
15, and I started to, I had to grow up a little. I was always a little short, so I I couldn't even hold one of those things, even if there was one around, until I
right.
was a teenager. So that's how that started. And then when I went to college, I studied classically too. But so really, the upright was the last thing in the chain. But I had a mentor too, this guy, Chris Paler, spelt Polar, from the Bay Area. He played with a lot of people, played with Wes
Yeah.
Montgomery and all
Wow.
kinds of people. Played
Mm,
with Earl Father Hines. He even got to play with Elvin a little bit. He played
mm.
with a ton of people. And I met him. He was getting his teaching credential at this middle school where I was going to school.
Hmm.
I was about, around 12, 13, turning 13 years old when I met him. And he hit me to miles and all this stuff. He taught me a lot of stuff and made me learn how to read music
That really opens you up, I'm
and taught
sure.
me
Wow.
about jazz. Yeah.
I'm
Hit
sorry. Looks like we're having a little technical difficulties. You're breaking up a little bit on me.
me to Miles and Chick and Herbie and all this stuff.
Okay.
It was
Okay.
deep. And so he still, I keep in touch with him still. Okay, sorry.
It's
Uh,
okay. Yeah, we were just breaking up a little bit. Yeah, I had some
yeah, I
technical
don't know what
difficulties
happened there. Can you
speaking.
hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you great now. I can see you.
Yeah.
Now, I was going to ask you, John, during that time period, I guess before college or right around that time, were you playing in local bands in California?
Yeah. Once I was a teenager, first of all, I was playing in my brother's band
Okay.
from probably age 13. And then I had some old guys would pick me up, and because I couldn't drive, I had this
Okay.
one guy who would take me to gigs, and he taught me a lot of tunes. He would just call standards. I had no idea. And I would play by ear and have my little electric bass. And so I started playing gigs, and then through high school, played some gigs. Then in
Uh-huh.
college, a lot of gigs. I went to college first year at San Francisco State. Then we
Okay.
moved to LA, and that's when my career really started. I was doing, even some recording sessions, demo sessions in later on in college, the second 2 years of college, and then was driving up to LA and hearing music and doing stuff, and got involved, and then started. I moved up to town when I was 22,
Okay.
and
And
then everything started to really roll. And by the time I was 25, I had the gig with Chick Corea. But before
that's
that, yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to ask you, John. How did you make that transition? I mean, because playing with someone like Chick Corea or Herbie Hancock, that's like probably the the biggest gig that you probably ever had up until that point. But how did you make that transition to get to play with someone of his stature?
It was kind of a wild thing. I was playing with a lot of people in LA, doing every kind of gig I could. I was in with some Brazilian players too, and I was playing with Victor Feldman. That was pivotal, and I'll tell you why later. But I was also playing with Joe Farrell, who played with
Yeah,
Chick.
yeah,
So I kept saying, Joe, when is he going to have auditions? He said, well, he's not doing auditions per se.
right.
So I was like, oh, well. So we were playing in Ayrton and Flora Purim's band,
Mm-hmm.
Brazilian thing. And
Right.
so at the same time, I was playing in Victor Feldman's trio. And he was amazing and very much a mentor to me. And so while I was doing that, the first road gig I ever did was with Gap Mangione. I was about 19.
Oh, wow.
And that's Chuck's brother. Gap played
Yeah.
piano. He also played with Art Blakey a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
But he took me around a little bit on the road, and then from him I met his brother. And one time, his brother was living in LA too, in Brentwood at the time, so
Mm-hmm.
in a really nice part. and he would have jam sessions. So I went over there one night and I was playing, and Chick's wife, Gail Moran, was playing
Yeah.
piano at the jam. So she heard me. We played. She went home and told Chick. Then the next thing that happened was they would have Valentine's Day parties every year at their house, and they would invite people they liked, and they loved Victor Feldman and his playing.
Hmm.
And they would say, if you want to bring a group to play too, you can play, and there's going to be food, and a bunch of people would play. So there I was playing in Chick's living room with Victor Feldman's trio, and that was freaky. And then that's how I met him. And then later on, he said, "Well, do you?" Yeah, I started on that. He goes, "Well, I'm starting this electric group," and then he said, "Can you give me some tapes or recordings that you're on playing electric?" So I did. I was on a Claire Fisher record. Was giving him live tapes from the Baked Potato, different
Right.
things with different people. And then
Interesting.
he heard me on those things, and at first I remember because I was doing a fair amount of recording at that point. I was playing sessions, doing
Right.
session work,
Okay.
and so one day I was at a studio, and there was one engineer who was always joking with me, you know, playing practical jokes. And one
Hmm.
day he said he rang the intercom. I was in the break on a break in the lounge. He said, "Chick Corea's on the phone." I was like, "Yeah, right." And I hung up the phone, and then he called back again. This friend, the engineer Wally, and he did it again. And I went, "Wally, come on, man, stop." You know. Then the third time he called again. He said, "You better pick up the phone. It's really him." I was like, so it was fake. And because earlier, like a couple of weeks before that, he had called me and said, "Oh, I'm listening to your stuff. I really like it." But then we talked for
Hmm.
a while, and then he hung up. So I thought, "Oh, okay, I guess I didn't get the gig." But
Yeah.
then he called a couple of weeks later, and he said, "I've been listening, and would you consider joining my band?" He said, "I know you're busy doing session work." I said, "Man, are you crazy? Can I come over now?"
Wow. Now,
So
John, I'm sorry,
that's how.
continue.
Well, and before that, I've been really growing a lot because I was playing with Joe Farrell. I
Hmm.
played with Hubert Laws at that point.
Hubert
I
Laws,
played
yeah.
with a lot of people in LA, Frank Traceri, Don Menza. Um, I wound up playing with Freddie Hubbard during that
Oh,
time too,
wow.
and just a lot of people, a lot of different people. Um,
Mm.
uh, Stan Getz. I used to play a fair amount with the great drummer Roy McCurdy and just a bunch
Hmm.
of guys, Claire Fisher, um, tons of people in that area.
Okay. Now, John, how'd you start playing the six string bass? Because to be honest with you, the only person that I really heard playing that at the time, I believe, was Anthony Jackson. But you really brought the instrument out when I heard you in some of those early recordings with Chick in the '80s. I'm like, who is this guy? I says, he's got an incredible sound. And I looked and I saw that you played six string bass. Is that something that you always played, or did you start with just a regular, four string and moved on
No,
to that?
I started with a four string, and I love Anthony. Anthony
Okay.
was an influence on me,
Mhm.
and he was the one who invented the whole thing. Like he got
Yeah.
people to build them, and in that way.
Interesting.
So he was an innovator, and
Hmm.
he stands as a giant in all the bass players' eyes. We know him, even though sometimes because he was such a studio dude, he did
Hmm.
go out and play live, of course. Um, but he was mostly known for all his. He mostly all those records that he plays on, that he has played on. But he was
Yeah.
the innovator of the six string. But
Yeah.
at the time, what happened was I heard it and I thought, when I got with Chick, I thought, I think the six string bass would be a great bass for this music because, we're going to do some stuff with the wood acoustic, but also this electric stuff. At first, it was
Hmm.
just a trio. It was
Hmm.
just Chick and Dave Weckl and I. So I was playing some melodies and I was having a solo a lot. And I thought, well, I would like to have that high string and I'd like to have the low string because Chick had all those synths. And in the 80s, the keyboard players were trying to take over the world. They were
Hmm.
playing lower notes than the bass.
Right.
So I was like, wait a minute, we need those things. So Anthony really pioneered it and had a, he, indirectly helped me find my voice
Interesting.
because
Yeah.
that became a real part of who I was and something that made me sound a little different at the time
Hmm. I
because
remember
most
people.
people were trying to be like Jocko.
Of
at
course,
that
of
point.
course. Yeah, he revolutionized the instrument. Everyone wanted to sound like Jocko or Stanley Clark. But one of the interesting things that I got, when I first heard you, I'm like, wow, this guy really has a very distinct sound on the instrument. And I remember people saying, this is like Chick's second group. This is like Return to Forever #2. I'm like, but all that stuff that you guys did on GRP was beautiful. I mean, everything from Eye of the Beholder, Beneath the Mask, Inside Out. I loved all of it. And actually, the first time I actually saw you play was a concert you guys did in Japan called GRP Super Live with Dave
Oh
Grusin and all
yeah.
the musicians. Man, that was fantastic. That was the first time I saw you. And I said, oh, this guy's great on electric and acoustic bass. And I was hooked at that point. Now, I understand that Chick was responsible for helping you get your record deal with GRP, your first record.
Totally, totally. And I have to add, you know, one of my early heroes, and the reason why I play both instruments so much
Hmm.
was
Hmm.
Stanley first.
Uh-huh.
It was
Okay.
Stanley because Stanley showed me that you could play both instruments, uh, with somebody like Chick on the highest level,
Right.
play them like so powerfully. Stanley he sort of blew open the doors. He was the first
Yeah.
bass hero that transcended all genres. He was playing with British rock guys. He was
Hmm.
a jazz guy. He was a funk guy. He was an everything dude. So
Yeah.
he really kind of in that part of my life, just thinking about doing both and
Yeah.
really trying to aim high. So
Hmm.
and it was no surprise, and it was very interesting that he had. So it was daunting first thinking, oh my God, I'm going to play. I was going to play in the same, with the same guy that Stanley was in that band.
Right.
Stanley Clark played with Chick. Anthony Jackson played on Leprechaun with Chick.
Hmm.
Eddie
Leprechaun.
Gomez played with Chick.
Hmm.
All, three heavyweight dudes. And I was like, oh boy,
Exactly.
I hope people don't expect me to be like them, and so those guys had a lot to do with it. And also I love Jocko too, but I was
Yeah.
also somebody who was doing both. So and
Right.
I wanted to go away from the fretless because everybody was fretlessing out and they were so trying to be him and nobody was going to sound like him. So
Right.
I found the six string, and so Chick actually helped me get that six string because
Interesting.
what happened was, and he also got me the record deal too. But first the
Hmm.
bass. So before I
Hmm.
did a record, he I said, man, I really think this bass would be really right for this music, but it's a little more that I don't have that. I think it was between 3 and 5 grand. This is 1985. And
Wow.
I was, I just didn't have that lying around. So
Right.
he said, look, I'll get it. I'll give you the money for it, and then we'll take it out of your check until it's paid off. Cool. So 1985, after the summer, like we had done some gigs in the spring with the
Hmm.
electric band, was Dave Weckl and me and Chick, and then we had opened, we had been on a big festival at the Queen Mary and Miles was on the festival, and
Wow.
Miles heard the band and he dug it, and he was asking for Chick for some of the music, and Chick asked him, "What do you think of the band?" He said, "It sounds like 8 guys." So
That's miles for you. Well,
yeah, so exciting. So the bass opened up a lot of that was really exciting. So the bass opened up a lot of things. So then, there it was 1980. I've been writing a lot of music for a while, and
hmm,
he kept, I'd show him my stuff at the piano, and he'd say, "Man, what are you doing? You should have a band, and you should make a record." And I said,
hmm.
"Well, that sounds great, but how am I going to get a record deal? They're not exactly falling over themselves to sign bass players." And so he did it. Like GRP was interested in signing Eric because he was a horn
Hmm.
player,
Eric Marienthal, yeah.
and yeah, and Eric, he's great. But Chick said, okay, you can have him, but you have to sign the bass player. He's a composer. He's writing all this music. You should check him. You should really let's make a record on him. And they were like, we want to hear demos. Chick said, no, no, you'll hear the record when it's finished. And they said, well, would you produce it? And he said, sure. So he helped me produce the first record. But when
And
he
he played
came to
on it
me,
too.
he did. Well, this is the funny thing. He said, I got this deal for you, and they want me to produce you. And I said, wow, that would be great. He said, but I'm going to teach you how to do it. And to me, you can do whatever's in your heart to do, and I'll just help
Mhm.
facilitate that. And I went, wow, would you play on it? And he said, sure. So
Wow.
he taught me how to do budgets, and we actually, you know, that record was crazy. I mean, that record was up for a Grammy. It did
Yeah.
really well on the charts. It went to #1 on the Billboard thing, and
Great
it
record,
was a
man.
shocker for me because I was just making a dream record. I wasn't
Hmm.
thinking about commerciality or anything. I was
Right.
just writing, playing, and it's a jazz record. It's not really, it's not a pop record, but
Right.
it's a fusion of different things.
Those early records that you did, two of them that are my personal favorite is On the Corner and Sketchbook, especially On the Corner.
Oh
That
yeah,
you opened up with that funkiest tune, do 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 do, bump bump, do 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 do. I mean, that was like, I'm like, John is just
yeah,
in
yeah,
a
yeah.
funk zone. I love those records, John. Those are two of my favorite, and I still play them to this day. I mean, I have my in my car, I have my CD, and I just have it jacked up, just riding, downtown, listening to Patitucci, and you're just there with that black jacket on, leaning, with
Yeah, yeah.
that was fantastic, man. I love that CD. Yeah, Sketchbook was fantastic too. And I was really into everything you guys did at that time. So I'd buy something of Dave Weckles. I said, oh, John and them are on this too, or Eric
Yeah.
Marienthal and
Well,
Frank
thank you.
Mbali, all you guys. Everything you did at that time was just fantastic, man. I loved it. And actually, the very first time I saw you in person, and as I said, I saw you in '87 during the GRP Super Live, the video. But when I saw you in person, you were actually in Washington, D.C. This is 1990, and the Chick Corea Electric Band played at a place called the Ritz. And
Wow.
I saw you live, and I'm like, man, this bass player is just out of this world. Because of course, the guys that I was listening to, of course, were Jocko, Stanley, Marcus, guys like that. And I heard you, I'm
Yeah.
like, man, this guy's like one of my favorites now. And I was just blown away, by your technique and seeing someone play a six string like that. It was amazing. And I think I remember, I don't know, I guess it was sometime in the early '90s. I think he put out an instructional video too, and I bought that, and
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
was just like, wow, it's just incredible, incredible. But
Well,
now,
thank you. Thank
yeah,
you.
oh, it was fantastic. Now, even today, do you tend to play the upright more than the electric? Because I notice, of course, sometimes when you guys reunite with Chick and sometimes with other artists, you'll play, the electric. But it seems like you really are in more into the upright. And of course, you've composed a lot and you've written so many great songs. But do you actually enjoy playing the upright more? I think we're having some technical difficulties again here. Oh boy. Um, I'm sorry, John. I
No,
can't hear you.
I
Oh, there we go.
still, I'm 50-50 really. Can you
Okay.
hear me? Can you
I
hear
can
me
hear you
now?
now. Yeah, you just broke up on me
How
real
about
bad. You're
now?
back. Yeah, gotcha.
Yeah. So what happened was, when I moved to New York, people were calling me to play acoustic mostly because of the way New York is. And then
Right.
after a while, it's like, you know, I was realizing that some people forgot that I play electric. So I was like, oh man.
Mhm.
So then I started doing more like the Brooklyn album. The Brooklyn
Mm,
album, I don't know if you've heard that
mhm.
record.
I'm
It's a
familiar with it.
guitar
Yeah.
quartet. It's all electric. And that's just a few years ago.
Mm,
So, and then people started calling again. So now I've been doing a lot of electric stuff again as well. So I,
right.
I like them both.
Yeah. Yeah. And like I
Yeah,
said, man, you're.
you should check out Brooklyn. Brooklyn.
I'm sorry. We got some technical difficulties again. You're breaking up. Oh boy. Let's see.
The Brooklyn record is all electric bass.
Okay.
Oh man.
Yeah, we were just having some
Okay.
technical difficulties. You're
How
going.
about, is that okay?
You're good. Yeah, you're good right now. Yeah, you're good. Yeah. And so, you were playing, I
Okay.
guess.
Yeah, that record that I made. Oh no, I'm sorry, there must be a delay. Um,
Yeah.
no, the record that I was trying to tell you about is called Brooklyn, and that's all electric.
Okay.
That's more
Okay.
recent.
Yeah. And I saw something that you had done with several bass players. I saw some footage of it. I think it was yourself, Victor Wooten, and I believe Steve Bailey. And Victor was playing upright. You were playing like the electric bass. I'm not sure when. I think it was like 2010 or 11. You guys had did some type of performance together, and it was really really nice. I was checking out some stuff with you. Now during the 90s, I guess you continued with what your own various bands and different artists. And how did you get to play with Wayne Shorter? I mean, because when you got with him, I was like playing with someone like Wayne or Miles. That's like the highest you can go, you know. And every bass chair, I'm sure, wanted to play in that band. How did you get to play with Wayne Shorter?
I met him through Chick in
Ah,
1986. We were
okay,
on tour together. There was a tour called Chick, Wayne, and Al,
gotcha.
and it was the every night Al Dimiola would play solo guitar.
Hmm.
Then it was either Chick's band or Wayne's band. We would alternate. And Wayne had made the Atlantis record, so
Yes.
he had a great band. It was an electric group, and it
Hmm.
was really cool. And I got to know him, and then we met, and he heard me play. We were playing every night on the summer tour. And then after that, the next year, he hired me to play on Phantom Navigator, one of his records.
Mm. Yes, I know
And
that one.
so I played on that a bit. And then we kind of really we hit it off, and we kind of, he would call every once in a while, and I was kind of still really, between 85 and 95, those 10 years, I was really committed to the Chick stuff. So I
Mm.
couldn't get out to do things. But then after I left to do more of my own thing and everything, then I would play on and off with Wayne too
Right.
during that period. But then in the 90s, then I got, I left and to do my stuff. And then in the mid 90s, Wayne would call every once in a while. And then towards the late 90s, he said, I want to do this thing. Do you want to be in it? And I said, are you kidding? Of course. So, and then, so I was the first one that wound up being in what would later be called the Wayne Shorter Quartet.
Right.
Around the turn of the century, 2000,
Mhm.
that's when the other guys showed up, Danilo Perez and Brian Blade.
Exactly. Exactly. Wow. Now, let me ask you a question. Just Wayne to me is, along with Duke Ellington, is probably the greatest composer of all time in jazz. Now, is Wayne the type of person, because I know that he reads books a lot and he watches movies, is he the type of person that could watch a film and there could be a scene in the film where the guy is drunk? Would Wayne say something like, hey, John, play that, you know, to really get you guys? Oh, I'm sorry, I can't hear you again. We got some
Yeah,
technical up there.
yeah. I mean,
Here,
he used to say even before. Yeah, man. Can you hear me now? Yeah.
I got you
So,
now. I got you
even
now.
before the quartet, sometimes when we play gigs, yeah, sometimes we play gigs even before the quartet. Sometimes when we would go out on stage, he would say, "Let's make a movie," And so he was,
Mhm.
and I like movies a lot too. We hit it off with that, and I read a lot of
Right.
books too. So
Right.
and I like to, and I really tried to hold on to my childlike imagination, and he's all about that.
Hmm. Hmm.
His thing also becoming coming out of Miles's group, his thing is to really improvise from nothing and not have any trick bag of licks or all that kind of stuff. So he's amazing and a genius. He's a complete
Yes.
genius.
John, you just made me think of something. I was talking to Dave Holland, a bass player, one time, and he said that Miles would keep us on our toes, and we would rehearse a couple of tunes, and then we would go to perform the songs, and then he would change the songs. He says, "I don't want you to play what we've been practicing." He says, "I want you to play what you don't know," and they'd be like, "What?" Just to keep them on their toes. But I can hear. I mean, when you guys are on stage, it's just amazing to just close your eyes and sit and listen and just hear you guys create and just come up with stuff. And it's just some of the most beautiful music I've ever heard. Very inventive and creative. And I'm sure yourself, being a bass player, it's probably some of the most, I would say, maybe technical music that you've ever played, because you guys are explorers. And Wayne and Joe Zawin, who talked about that in Weather Report. I was reading an article, and they said that we're into writing sagas and epics.
Yeah, yeah,
That's what we do. But
totally.
who are some of your influences on acoustic bass? Or people that maybe you're listening to now?
Well, my first influences were definitely Ron Carter and Ray Brown.
Mm,
Later on, of course, you know, a little bit of Niels Pedersen, but then it was guys like really like Paul Chambers, Jimmy Garrison,
Yeah.
Dave Holland, Charlie Hayden, Eddie
What about
Gomez.
what about
And
Mingus,
yes, absolutely.
especially as a
Uh,
composer? Yeah.
yeah, and the Mingus changes 1 and 2.
Yeah.
Those records, because it was in the 70s, those came out. I freaked out. I went crazy like over that music. I thought it was amazing. And then
Yeah.
also I went back later and heard Better Get Hit in Your Soul and all those things, the Haitian fight song and all this stuff. And the beautiful, like Ellington's Duke Ellington's Sound of Love, the ballad of love.
Yeah. Yeah.
Can you hear that?
Yeah. You just
I
started
don't know.
breaking up
Am I
again.
there? Can you hear that? Yeah.
Yeah, you're back. Yeah. You just made me think of something. A recording that I really liked a lot with Duke Ellington and Charles Mingus is called Money Jungle. That's a favorite of mine too.
Sure, with Max Roach.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Max Roach.
Yeah, Max
Exactly.
Roach.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
Now,
Yeah.
John,
I
continue.
oh no. In terms of other guys, you know, I'm trying to think. There's so many guys. I like Percy Heath too, and Sam Jones, and um, all
You
those
got
Detroit guys.
yeah, you
Ron,
got
but also
yep.
also you know, um, oh my gosh.
I got some
Uh,
names for you. I got what Buster Williams, Cecil
well,
McBee.
Buster Williams too,
Yeah.
but the guys from Detroit, there was PC, there was Ron Carter, and then there's the Doug Watkins.
Doug Watkins.
Yep,
Yeah,
also.
I know Doug Watkins. Yeah. And
Yeah.
there's another one who used to play on a lot of Blue Note records. He played with everyone. He played with Andrew Hill and so many on Blue Note. He's in his early 80s, and I can't think of his name. He's from Chicago, if I'm not mistaken. Um, just slips my mind at the moment, but he's a well-known big player.
Also, who just died was Henry Grimes, great bass
Yeah,
player.
Henry Grimes. Yeah, I
Um,
saw that.
Also, you know, um, and as a young man, I got to know Rufus Reed. He taught me a bit,
Rufus
and
Reed.
he's a
Yes.
great bass player.
Hmm.
As is Ray Drummond also. There's so many guys.
So many. Reggie Workman. There's
Reggie
so many.
Workman,
Yeah.
Reggie, but Jimmy Garrison had a profound and lasting impact on me from that band,
Mm,
um, from Train's band. You
yeah.
know,
Yeah.
there's so many guys that play so beautifully and that really touch me in different ways.
Mm, mm. Now, John, I was going to say, I know that Wayne is not touring anymore. How's he doing?
He's doing okay. He's going to be 87 this year.
Man, what a blessing.
So
What a blessing.
so he's not going to be playing and traveling, I don't think anymore. But so the band is not, the band is a performing group is not happening anymore. He is working on an opera. He's writing an opera.
Mm, mm.
So if once that's done, I'm sure we'll be part of the group that performs it, but he won't
Right.
play.
Now
Yeah.
you do a lot of stuff with Danilo sometimes, just the two of you. You guys working on anything together right now? Because I was reading something I think not long ago about you guys working on something. Um,
We've done a lot of things.
oh boy.
You're breaking up now. I couldn't hear you, but
Okay.
we did Danilo and I did collaborations with Roy Haynes.
Oh,
Danilo and I played with Roy Haynes. We played with DeJohnette together. We've done a lot of things together, and now we have the Children of the Light, the trio with Brian. We've done
yes.
stuff with Terry Lynn Carrington also. Yeah, we've been playing together over 20 years,
Wow. And you actually played.
maybe, I
You
don't know,
actually
something
played.
like
Yeah. You actually played with the late drummer Tony Williams too, didn't you?
a little bit. He was trying to get me on some things like these
Yeah.
all-star situations, and he was really very kind to me.
Yeah.
We didn't get to play much. We got fired off a Crusaders record together.
Oh wow.
That was really strange, but that's a whole other story we don't have to get into. But yeah, that was wild. But I remember hanging out with him a lot on that, and we talked a lot about a lot of things. And he
Yeah.
was an amazing composer too. I loved his
Oh,
writing.
oh yeah. One of his last recordings, Wilderness, was fantastic. He did that with the late Michael Brecker, Pat Metheny, and Stanley Clark. Yeah, some really good stuff on there. Now I wanted to ask you about this wonderful lady that you're married to. Is it Sachi or Sachi?
Sachi. It's a
Sachi, now
Japanese name.
have you guys done any projects together, the two
Well,
of you?
she's on a bunch of records of mine.
Ah,
Um, the first one was called One More Angel.
okay.
She's also on Communion. She's on Songs, Stories, and Spirituals. She's also on the last one I did called Soul of the Bass, and
In-
she's on Remembrance too. She's on a bunch of records. She's a wonderful cellist,
Man,
and
that's fantastic.
yeah, she's great musician and also my manager.
Wow.
But
You-
we're still doing stuff together. Also, we've played at church for years too. But also, um, we're gonna try to do a duet project too, like a you know, because we have a studio at home too. So
mm, mhm,
yeah,
mhm.
we
Well,
got
John,
plans.
listen, I just want to thank you so much for this interview, and please hold on afterwards. Don't hang up. But just wanted to thank you for the interview. It's been a pleasure just sitting here talking to you, reminiscing about just history and the music that you played. And as the saying goes, if the music grooves and makes you move, it must be jazz. I'm Preston Williams with Jazz Talk signing off. Peace.